From a diagnosis of ADHD to repeated sexual abuse, drug addiction, and time spent in prison, to forgiveness and a life of helping others. Welcome back to another episode of Irrepressible, ordinary people with extraordinary resilience. And in this episode, I speak to the founder of Eeverse, James. Now, James's story is a really powerful one. He's been through some extraordinary circumstances in his life. When he was young, he was diagnosed with ADHD, found out that he had been self-medicating, using drugs. He got involved in some difficult situations, found himself being repeatedly sexually abused. That led to further problems with drugs and finding himself involved in criminality and eventually finding himself in prison. But he's turned his life around completely. James talks about how forgiveness played a big part in this and how he recognizes now that by sharing his story, the ripple effects can be huge. There's a bit of a trigger warning in this one as James shares quite openly and courageously about his story, so just be aware of that. But there's so much that we can take away and so much power in James's story. It's no wonder that he's having the impact on the world that he's having today. If this is the first time that you've ever been here, then please make sure that you have subscribed and you've turned on those notifications so each and every time we post a video, sit back, grab the tissues. This is a really powerful interview. James, good to have you here, my friend. How are you doing today? How are you doing this morning?
All is good, mate. I've had a workout, feeling
Good.
strong.
Good.
I'm good. How are you?
Day, right? Yeah, same, mate. Same as that. Always start the day with my routine, mate. It's needed. So, listen, why don't you take a little bit of time to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the world today.
Yeah, thanks, bro. My name's James Crystal. I am studying full-time at university. I've set up my company, Eeverse. Our mission is to destigmatize mental health and have a positive impact on the UK statistics. And just massively passionate about sharing people's personal stories, just like you are, pretty much, bro. And getting more people talking in the hope that it will have a domino effect. And I think the more people that are talking, the better. In the long run. Just trying to educate people on different ways to improve their mental health. Using positive living and positive thinking. So that's kind of where I am now. Just been on a journey, man, like you and like we all have, and just trying to do some good in the world now.
Yeah, and you're doing some really good stuff, mate. We connected. We met through LinkedIn, right? It was when we first connected on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the stuff that you're doing, and I think it's incredible. And I guess kind of links nicely to what it would be good to talk about today. That the reason you're doing what you're doing, I know and I can sense that there's a backstory, right? And so, what is it? What adversity is it that you faced in your life, right? That's kind of brought you to where you are today. Why don't you sort of take us through it?
Yeah, man. Thank you. I guess it started when I was growing up. I struggled with authority and had some behavioural issues. The teachers just used to say I was naughty, label me as being naughty. And I started smoking weed when I was about 14 or so. Ended up seeing a psychologist, and he diagnosed me with ADHD. And he said, "Yeah, you've been self-medicating with the cannabis." So that was crazy to hear that at the age of 15, and finally have an answer to why my behavior was as it was, and it obviously beat the previous label. But I mean, shortly after that, I was kicked out of school. They just couldn't deal with my behavior and expelled me. And then shortly after that, I was still smoking weed and I was drinking and kind of surrounding myself with people that weren't a good influence on my life. I ended up being drugged. I was kidnapped and sexually abused on multiple occasions. And so, as you can imagine, that just sent my life kind of spiraling out of control. And I think in those moments I lost my dignity, I lost my manhood, my self-esteem, my confidence. It all just went out the window. And just completely lost respect for myself. And so I moved on to harder drugs, and I was you know, partying and going through grams and grams of cocaine and just drinking heavily, sleeping around and gambling, doing all of this sort of stuff, which looking back, I just wanted to take the pain away. I just didn't want to have to remember what he'd done to me. And I didn't want to have to think about it. And I guess I was actually in denial about what had happened as well. Like, I didn't want to believe or admit to myself that it had happened. And I really, I really hated the fact that I couldn't do anything about it in those moments. You know, I was just, either I was obviously unconscious or I was just shell shocked. And I really regretted the fact that I didn't try to, you know, fight harder to stop it happening. And so there was all this all this was going on in my head, and getting out of my nut on drinking drugs just really helped short term. But obviously got me in a lot of trouble. I lost a couple of really close friends to drugs. One pal died in the river on his way home on Christmas Eve. He was younger than me. He was like 13, 14 from drugs. And then another friend of mine had a brain hemorrhage due to drugs he was taking as well. And so it was just a really crazy time. There was a lot of death and destruction around me. And I just started hurting, you know, the people that loved me, the people that, you know, actually cared about me, and just started pushing them away. And so it was a really tough time, and I started selling drugs to kind of feed my habits and feed my lifestyle. I was in court a few times on drug offences and for selling drugs. And then I started robbing people, bags and different things like that, and that ended up getting me sent to prison. And so yeah, I think in a way that was where a chapter ended, and another chapter kind of started. And this is where my journey with, you know, more serious mental health conditions started. Like being put in a cell, like a 6x8 cell, whatever it is, all on my own. And I had all those vices taken away, all those vices that I previously relied on to as a coping mechanism, completely taken away. I only had myself and my thoughts, you know, to deal with, you know, and I had to start thinking about all those mistakes that I made, you know, and regret was running through me as deep as the ocean. And the flashbacks and the memories from the abuse came back to haunt me. And it was just really shit, bro. Like, I was diagnosed with PTSD and depression. I was put on antidepressants and antipsychotics. And I guess that helped, you know, to an extent as well. But then, you know, looking back on that, again, it was another short-term fix. You know, it was another, well, we'll just cover this up with drugs. We'll just numb the pain. You know, we'll just block those pathways that I think, you know, that where the trauma's coming back. We'll just block those pathways rather than actually deal with them. And so again, that's another. Well, for me, I just found that like another quick short-term fix. But anyway, you know, I did my time and came out. I moved away from the area I was living, get away from, you know, my abuser and negative influences on my life, and be close to family. I just wanted to get a fresh start and, you know, really try and just forge a new life for myself. Pretty soon after moving away, I found a church community, which, you know, for me has been like, you know, probably the biggest part of my journey. Just finding that community of people that loved me, you know, that accepted me, you know, and just, you know, just loved me, you know, and just championed me, supported me, and gave me that kind of open, non-judgmental space to talk about myself, share a bit of my story. And it was the first time really that I had started opening up and talking a bit about the abuse. And people just listened to me, you know, and gave me solid advice and didn't judge me for it. Whereas before, I was always scared that I'd tell people and they'd judge me, you know, which is bonkers. Why should I have been judged? You know, I was 15, he was like 40 odd. But that's just what I thought. And, you know, because I judge myself, I just thought that's what other people would think. So finding that church community and for me, like finding religion and Christianity was massively important. But my mental health was still bad, bro. Like I was at rock bottom and I was still drinking. And I got to a point where I was just sleeping 18 hours a day, every single day, 18 hours at least. I didn't want to be awake. I was so depressed that when I was asleep, I was happy. You know, I was at peace. And so whenever I was awake, I was just desperately trying to get back to sleep. I was taking more medication than I was being prescribed. I was drinking. I wasn't really eating. I was like weeing in a bucket. Like it was just crazy time, but like I was not in a good place at all. And I was at rock bottom. And so this went on for a few months. And then, yeah, the massive change, like the catalyst for change came when I was at church one day and my friend and pastor was speaking about forgiveness, you know, and it's crazy how important it is to forgive people. I never knew this, you know, and not just from a religious point of view, but from a psychological point of view. And I've spoken to psychologists about it as well. And they say, you know, that they swear how important it is. But I got to a point where I realized I need to move on from what happened, you know. The abuse that I'd suffered had controlled my life for too many years. And I need to take back control. You know, I found myself, you know, I was, you know, my ship was sinking, my vessel was sinking rapidly, and I was just clinging onto it. And either I could kind of cling on to what was left of it, or I could just take a dive off into the unknown and have a kind of leap of faith. And that's what I did. So I decided to leave that behind, and I forgave my abuser. And I can't tell you how important that was, you know, for me. It took the pain away. I was resenting. I had so much resentment and anger and hatred towards him. It was just eating away at me inside. And you know, looking back, that wasn't affecting him. You know, that he didn't know that I had that anger towards him. It wasn't affecting his life, but it was affecting mine, you know, and it was killing me mentally, physically, you know, everything. My whole life had just fallen apart, and letting go of that anger, letting go of that resentment, it just brought a real sense of freedom in my mind. And I found complete freedom from addictions now. I gave up drinking 3 years ago in July. Completely gave up. Wow. And that's been massive, bro. Like that, you know, sometimes I wouldn't mind having a quick drink, but I just know that I don't want to slip back into where I was, you know. And so that's been massive. And yeah, I've been off my antidepressants for a year and a half now. I found massive freedom from my mental ill health. Obviously I still have ups and downs, because of course that's just mental health, bro. Like no one's mental health is perfect, and if anyone says theirs is, then they're lying. But yeah, I found massive freedom. You know, like I said, I'm now a year and a half of the way through the university degree. You know, and I've only been out of prison like not even 4 years. Yes. So yeah, that's a bit of my story.
And do you get any help and support for coming off of those addictions, or has it literally come from the church community and that kind of willingness and ability to kind of find forgiveness and let go?
Yeah, not really, mate. Like not really any support. Like I know there is support available, like if people need it, and that there are rehabs and different places that will take people like free of charge. I know there is support, but I didn't really get much. I think it was I think I was quite embarrassed as well, like at the fact that I needed to use like drink and drugs and stuff to, you know, for whatever reason. But yeah, I think I came to a stage where I could look at what that had done to my life. I could look at what the drink and the drugs had done and how that had kind of shaped my life for a while, and how the decisions I made, weren't wise, rational decisions.
Mm,
And I guess I came to a stage where I just knew that my life wasn't worth living when I was taking them and drinking to that extent. And so, yeah, for me, it just came to a stage where I thought, no, I need to just stop.
mm.
I need to just be clean.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible that like you've kind of come to that realization in your own mind, and then kind of had the, I don't know, emotional maturity to be able to sort of navigate into living sort of a life that's, alcohol and drug free now, right? I think that's incredible based on what, everything that you've experienced as well. Do you like, what sort of things do you do now in order to kind of look after your emotional health, your mental health? What would you say are the main things that you're doing in your life today that keep you in check, so to speak?
The biggest one is going to the gym, to be honest, bro. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's almost become an addiction,
Mm,
but a healthy addiction. I don't use like steroids and or like proper hit it like 4 or 5 hours a day. I do an hour a day, maybe a little bit more, maybe a bit less. I have a couple of protein shakes, and it's just, mate, it's massively helpful. And I notice
mm,
if I don't go for a couple of weeks, my confidence levels start to drop. My general energy just drops, and I know that I'm at my best when I've been training. So that's been massive. And I pretty much started training as soon as I gave up the alcohol and also the drugs as well before. I pretty much went straight to the gym,
mm.
and then so it was like one thing to the next. So that's been probably one of the biggest things. Obviously, having my church community around me is massively helpful. Just being surrounded by decent people, who love me. We all
Yeah,
need that community, and I can fully understand people who, are extremely maybe depressed or suffering with PTSD or whatever it is, and if they haven't got that community around them, I can fully understand why they're depressed.
yeah,
I really can.
yeah. Community is so important, I think, to be regularly seen and heard by people that
Mm.
love you just for being you. I think is some of the most fundamental things that we need. Everybody needs in their lives, really.
Yeah, to have that purpose in community and feel valued by that community,
Yeah,
and know that you've got people that have got your back, like whatever happens, they've got your back and they want to support you. So that's obviously massive for me. um and then just things like playing golf. I'm an avid golfer, and I love golf, and I know that that's like my happy place, like when I'm on a
yeah,
golf course.
mm,
Like if I've had a crap day at work, I know if I go and have a quick round of golf, I know that I'm going to feel a lot better, a lot more free, and a lot more at peace because I'm
mm,
doing something that I love. So that's massively helpful. Um, yeah, I'd say probably those like three things really.
yeah. And you were diagnosed with like ADHD and stuff when you were younger. Is that something that's still in your life, or is it kind of something now that you feel like you're managing in the same way that you manage everything else?
Yeah, I don't notice it. Like
Mm,
obviously, like I do move about a bit when I'm talking. You probably would have noticed. So maybe like I need to be busy. I've got to be doing something, and even if I'm not doing something, I need to have some music on, so my brain's got something to kind of work with.
mm,
But then I do still crave that adrenaline rush as well. Like that.
yeah,
So I've done a couple of skydives last year, and just doing stuff like that kind of gives me that adrenaline rush that I think my
mm,
body craves.
yeah.
But it doesn't have a negative impact on my life.
No,
Definitely not.
no, no. And you can tell, mate, you can see when I'm speaking to you that, like, I don't know, the word that comes to my head is like abundance in terms of the way that you are. I feel like, and I don't mean material wise, I just mean emotionally. I feel like you've gone from this place. I mean, to kind of have been diagnosed with ADHD and to have them, to just be labeled a problem when you were a kid, I relate to that, right? And that has an impact on you, to just kind of almost be abandoned and rejected by adults repeatedly who tell you that you don't measure up to what you should be.
Mm.
But then to have gone on and to experience what you then went on to experience with the abuse and stuff, I think to have come through and to openly, I think one thing that you highlight, which is really important, is, you know, this is what mental health struggles really look like. Yeah. It's not necessarily just somebody being upset, right? Or having a bit of anxiety. The going out and robbing to feed an addiction, right? That's a symptom of a mental health problem, right? That's a real symptom that still gets way too much stigma and it's just not understood. And it's not that I'm saying it's okay to do those things, but if we understood where, you know, that these are a symptom of something much deeper, then I think we could create the real change that's needed in our society.
Yeah, I think that's wise, man. Wise words. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the plan now then for you in terms of what do you want to achieve? What's your goals now going forward? Because I know that you know, you're doing the university studies, you've got your business and that you've set up. You've said a little bit about it, but now I think it's got a lot more depth to it now we know your story. What's the dreams? What's the hopes and aspirations for you?
I think one of the main things for me is I want to be able to use that darkness that I experienced yesterday to make other people's tomorrow brighter. I want
Love
to. I
that.
don't. I don't want that. I don't want that abuse to have had a negative impact on my life, and I want to use that now. And all those experiences with the mental health and prison and all that sort of stuff. I want to use that for good. And I
Mm,
want to use my experiences to help change other people's lives. You know, I want to have a positive impact on society, and I want to beat the odds. I want to prove people wrong.
mm,
And so, you know, Eeverse, when I set it up, was all about reversing negatives into positives. And that's why if you see our logo, it's two E's reversed. And that's literally what it was. Because I can now look back on that sexual abuse that I suffered for me personally and say, actually, that was a positive in my life. Yeah. I
wow.
can look back at the prison and say, I'm pleased that I went to prison. I regret what I did, obviously. I'm not saying anything like, you know, I deeply regret it, but all of that stuff that's happened, I can now look upon and say, yeah, it's positive. That was a positive in my life because it's made me who I am today.
Mm,
It's made me a man that I'm proud of. And it's also given me that platform and given me that kind of those building blocks to now go and use it for good, you
yeah.
know? And I've come to a point, and I want to encourage other people to come to a point where they're not focusing wasted energy on the past and things that have happened in the past, because there's jack shit we can do about it,
Mm,
you know? And actually, rather than focusing energy on those things which, you know, like I say, we can't do, in fact, just focus energy on actually what can we use it for? How can we use that and change that, use that for good, you
mm,
know, and focus our energy on things that we can actually do something about. So that's kind of why I set up Eeverse, and then it's just evolved a bit into, you know, a community lifestyle brand, ethical clothing. This is one of the t-shirts. Says what matters the most, and that's all about community. As you can see, it's all about friendship, togetherness, and so I just want to do some good. So I set up a CIC, and we're funding it through the t-shirts, and we're just putting on charity events. So to raise money for obviously mental health charities who are, you know, working on the front line,
mm,
but then also to educate people through the events on different ways, like I said, to improve their mental health,
mm,
using psychologists, you know, dietitians, professional coaches, and people like that who can give people that information and that advice, that education that they possibly don't get when they go to a doctor and
mm,
say that they're depressed or they're anxious, you know,
mm,
or they're struggling with their mental health, you know. And there's that massive gap between people. Someone may have been anxious for, say, 5 years, X amount of years. They pluck up the courage to then go to the doctor, yeah, and open up for the first time. You know,
mm,
this is how I've been feeling, doctor. You know, I'm struggling to sleep. I'm having panic attacks, whatever it is. And they open up and they get given 8 minutes, maybe 10 minutes if they're lucky, of time, and they're just prescribed pills,
yeah,
medication. You know, 90% of the time.
yeah,
And it's just really sad. And there's so much. There is so much that people can try, you know, lifestyle changes and things that people can try before potentially needing the medication. And of course there's people that, yeah, you know, medication they need, and I think it should be a last resort, but unfortunately doctors are under-resourced, and it's not their fault. I'm not saying that, of course, but there's so much that people can try. And so I want to just, through these events, educate people on different ways to improve their mental health and to keep a stable mental well-being.
Yeah.
And just stuff that we're not told, when we go and see our local GP.
Yeah, mate, I think it's incredible. I think it's incredible that the work that you're doing are very needed as well. And it's a voice that needs to be heard from a lot of people. If people want to find out more about you and Eeverse and everything that you're doing, where's the best place that they can find you?
So www.eeverse.co.uk. So it's EEVERSE.co.uk. And then we're at Eeverse UK, social medias. So yeah, check it out, man. Just it'd be great to get you involved. Anyone that wants to share their story as well, like you, I just feel massively passionate about helping people share their stories. Because every time I've shared, and I've shared at various events, I've had people come up to me and say, "Oh, James, thank you so much for sharing," and it just gave me the courage to tell you this, James. I've been depressed now for about a year, and you're the first person I'm telling. And thank you for sharing. It gave me the courage to speak, and I'm like, flipping heck, man, this is crazy. So I know the more I share my story, the more other people open up about their own mental health, and I think the more they then open up, the more other people, and like we said at the beginning, it has that domino effect.
Yeah, the ripples are huge. Yeah,
man,
for sure, mate, for sure. Listen, I really appreciate you sharing your story and allowing yourself to be vulnerable in that way. I know that this will reach a lot of people in that sense. I just want to say that I'm really grateful for that, and I appreciate you and the work that you're doing. I'll obviously put everything that you've just said, all the links, and that'll be in the comments of this video so people can get in touch. But thank you, mate, and I look forward to doing some work with you in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, you too, man. Thanks. It's been a pleasure, bro.